Well, good evening. Here we are once again at the Check Drop, and welcome. Today is August 3rd. It is August 3rd. How did we get through August? Jesus. All right, here we are. My guest today in the Check Drop is a writer on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and is a former writer and performer on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, where he made his late night television debut. Please welcome to the show, comedian Josh Johnson. Welcome,
Hey,
Josh.
how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing well. Just out here living.
Yeah, you got. I would say that you've got your COVID hair going, but I have seen you in the last year, and you've had that
Yeah,
for a while. So
yeah. No, I've been working on this for quite some time. So this is not. I can't blame. I can definitely blame it not being trim on the pandemic, but I'm not blaming the entire hairstyle on the pandemic. I couldn't
no,
grow this in 3 months if I tried.
I don't know. Trevor's is getting pretty big.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been. This is padded down too.
Okay.
I'm trying to look at least somewhat presentable and have it somewhat symmetrical. So if I had just picked it out and just come to the show, it would be off camera, you know?
Okay. Well, I like it. It's becoming of you. So the
I
last
do
time I
my
saw
best.
you, I've seen you a couple times in the last year. I think I saw you last year at the South by Southwest. I believe you were
Hmm.
performing there, and I think you were on a show with Dulce Sloan and a couple other
Yeah.
people. And then I saw you open for Trevor Noah in Charlotte. So
Yeah, yeah.
you're a regular opener for Trevor, right? Does that come with
Yeah.
a job as being a writer for the show?
No, I mean, I only started opening for him in the last year, and I've been at the show now for almost 3 years.
Okay.
So just very, very lucky and blessed that he wanted to bring me along and has been, you know, a mentor of sorts in that way. And it's been great to watch him go up and watch him do his version of putting together his hour and the way that he's thoughtful on stage and stuff has been fun to watch.
Nice. So now, is that an audition process to get to open for him? I mean, obviously you've been working on the show for a while, or do you just kind of wait and say like, wait for him to kind of approach you and say, hey, you want to be my opening act for this tour that I'm on?
Yeah, there was no audition process or anything. If anything, if there had been an audition, I'm sure I would have thrown up. Like that's the prospect of being a part of the tour is so amazing that I don't know if I would have like let myself be easy about it. I think I would have just freaked myself out. But no, no, we he had me start opening for him in January, and I've been doing it the rest of the year and into this year and everything. And obviously with the virus and everything, like live shows are pretty much not happening. But just taking the time now to focus on my writing and my own approach to how I build an hour and how I communicate with an audience, whether it be in person or virtually and stuff. So just using this time to get more in tune with myself and everything.
Gotcha. Now, for that first time you went out on tour with him, that first date when you went to do one of those big arenas, I mean, was that just mind blowing, or had you done big events like that before?
I had had the opportunity to do some big shows before, but it definitely wasn't on the level where this is a thing that I do all the time, you know? So when I did a show in, what was it? It was Boston Calling, where I did, maybe that was my largest show to date at that point, and that was about 2,000 people, and it was in half of a hockey arena, so the other half was like cut off, and it still didn't compare. Like those first shows opening for Trevor was like insane. It was amazing.
Now, do you walk out on stage beforehand to like get the feel for it? Because I know when you played Charlotte, it was sold out, and I want to say, that arena holds, I don't know, about 17,000 when it's completely full, and I know they chopped off a bit, so it had to have been at least 10, 12,000 people. I mean, that's huge. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I
so,
mean, we get to do a sound check and stuff, but besides that, it's just, you know, you just sort of feel for it when you come out. It's not. I don't know how a person prepares.
And technically, how is the sound? Does it sound different when you're up on stage? Does it bounce around more? Because obviously in a club, it's intimate. You usually have low ceilings, and the sound is usually kind of crisp and right in your face. I could, just as someone that goes to see a lot of concerts and such, and the sound is always kind of echoing off. Do you get that feeling when you're on that stage, or is it pretty good? Like they work it out pretty good?
I mean, the actual sound quality is great. Like there's a great tour manager involved. There's lots of incredible staff and everything. But the feeling as a performer is just doing comedy out into the abyss because it's so many people and it's so dark that I half the time I can just see the front two rows and that's it. So then I know that thousands of people are there, but I don't get to really see them. And so it's not until you hear this booming laugh coming back at you that you realize that whatever you're experiencing is actually happening. It seems like what a dream of doing stand up would be like.
Nice. Now, on your bio, it says you're from Louisiana, but by way of Chicago. Now, I can remember the first time as a comedy agent, I'm always kind of listening to other people and other agents talk about comedy and comedians and who's coming up through the ranks and such. And I remember one time hearing your name, and I actually started Googling, and, when you were coming up through the ranks, whatever. And then I actually found another Josh Johnson at the time, and he was out of Texas.
Yeah.
And I had heard a rumor that other people were starting to hear your name as well, and Comedy Central had reached out to a Josh Johnson, thinking that was you, and actually booked the other Josh Johnson for a show. Is that rumor true, or?
So I don't. So I'm trying to remember.
It was Adam Devine's house party, I believe, is what the set was, and
I'm trying to remember how this exactly went because if we're going to talk about it, I need to do it right. It wasn't like Comedy Central proper because they knew me.
Okay.
Right.
At that time, they did.
Yeah. At that time, it was a production company that made the mistake. So it wasn't like it was for a Comedy Central show, but like,
okay.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's like because this other person didn't know me, they reached out to the wrong person.
There was a glitch in the matrix, and somewhere Comedy Central thought they had you, and the production company had booked somebody else. The other Josh Johnson.
Yeah. Like it's also very weird because it just feels like this blip in time. Like I'm sure at the time it was like such a big deal in my head, but then even then I was like, oh, as weird as it sounds, I was like, the mistakes happen. like I think it would be, different if it was I was shooting an hour special and then the wrong guy showed up and taped. That would be, oh gosh, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
I think there would be a little bit more checks and balances in the system somewhere before that happened.
Yeah, but I mostly just look back on it as like this goofy, funny thing that happened. Like it is so weird. Like I think that people also expect me to have more of a reaction out of it than I actually do.
Yeah.
Because then it's almost like a disappointing story. Because then people are like, "Whoa, what was that like? What happened?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I just didn't go to Hawaii. Like I was just living my regular life. Like it didn't feel like it happened, if that makes sense.
Right. Now, did you ever meet, or have you ever met that other comedian?
We had met once before. He came to a show I was doing that was in Texas, and he came by and watched, I guess, like the last half of my set or something, and then introduced himself right after. And we were aware of each other because I had been in Chicago for a little bit, and I guess he was still in Texas. And man, yeah, it's very weird. It's very weird to meet another person with your name, like your
that does
exact
stand-up
name,
comedy.
that also does stand-up comedy that's like around your height. It's just like, oh, wow, this is insane.
Right. Now, did you guys ever have that conversation like, hey, maybe you should use an initial in between or something to change a name or something? Or
Nah, we haven't really talked since that time we met. Like, we never really spoke again. It's just I think it was also weird for him maybe. So then he came to the show I was doing at like University of Dallas or something. And Yeah, ever since that, we never really spoke again.
Well, that's so weird because, like, in comedy, and it's like music and bands and or entertainers that you see that, like, there's lawsuits going on right now between like Lady Antebellum, who changed their name to Lady A, and there was, a soul singer that was already named Lady A, and there's a lawsuit there. So it's kind of weird how you navigate through those things when you have a competing name in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
I know a comedian that his name was Bill Burr, and
Oh,
it's
jeez.
not Bill Burr. So
That is a shame.
clearly
That's,
he had to
oh
change
man.
his name, and he's a great comedian. He changed
Yeah.
his, and he thought it was funny. He changed his name to Bill Blank. so
Yeah.
so
That
so
is
that's
funny.
kind of like, I guess you like, it almost seems like if somebody kind of rises that level faster, like hey, maybe it's time to change that name. So
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, isn't there a comic named Will Smith? And I don't think he's changed his name for better or worse. I mean, it's sort of
it's
he's stuck with
possible.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
but if
pretty
he
sure
was,
he did a half hour
yeah,
too.
but if he was a actor singer named Will
Yeah,
Smith,
yeah, but
yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, it's kind of like Michael B. Jordan, I guess, maybe. So
yeah,
I don't know. So, so did you get your start in stand up in Chicago?
yeah, pretty much. I did, little things here and there. So whenever I first started doing stand up, I guess the first ever time you could say I did it was like my high school talent show. And then from there, I did a couple of open mic nights in college. But where I really started to do stand up and cultivate it and write and think about a career and try to mold a voice was Chicago.
And how long did you stay there in the city there?
I was in Chicago for little over 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I moved to New York where I still am.
Now, do you feel like that's? I mean, that's still your comedy town, or you surpassed that and now New York's your?
It's tough to say. I love Chicago a lot. Like
Yeah.
like I don't think people understand how much it means to me and how much I developed there in a way that sure you get older and you change and you grow and stuff. And I'm doing a lot of that in New York, but Chicago feels like where I was born as a person, or at least as the person that I am now, in the way that I think and the way that I approach comedy and life. And so Chicago is always going to be this huge place in my mind, like this place I keep trying to come back to, this place I want to do well at and perform in and do the biggest shows that I can in. But also, I have to be I have to be real about the fact that I only make it over there so many times a year, and most of the following and the relationships in the industry that I'm cultivating are in New York. And so New York's been very kind to me. I can't pretend that it hasn't, but Chicago's always going to be like this deep home base.
Did you start with a certain amount of comedians, like a group, or did you just kind of just? How did you get your start?
I mean, I just got off the plane and did open mics. Like it wasn't like I obviously
This is
every
from
comedian,
Louisiana. You just
yeah,
flew to Chicago and got off the plane and just started telling jokes.
or at least tried to. Yeah, yeah, that was
Gotcha.
basically. But there's definitely a group of us that started around the same time, or at least I feel akin to, but not all of them are even from Chicago. I just consider them almost like classmates because of how we came up. So we got our half hours around the same time. We, you know, did certain festivals at the same time together and stuff. And so I look at that group as like my group that I came up with and everything. But overall, I think that you always sort of start and stop or quit or research as a loner. So I definitely had my friends coming up that I think were instrumental in me building up a voice and building up a whole style and things I
Gotcha.
wanted to talk about. And those people I'm still very close with. But overall, I think that class feeling that you have of we're the class of 2012, because that's when we all started, I think that starts to wane pretty quickly after the first few years, like when you realize I think you could actually make it akin to college where the friends that you make freshman year are probably not even going to graduate. Yeah, I mean, like you're,
Right.
and that's not a knock on anybody. It's just like you make these friends just out of proximity and necessity because you're alone or at this new school, and then every year a couple of them drop off to where you get to graduation and you're looking around and a quarter of them are there, you know? And I think that a lot of comedians experience that. A lot of people, no matter where you start with a cluster, and that cluster starts to fall off or go into other forms of entertainment. And then, the people who are sort of in it for the long haul, it brings you even closer together because now you're the only ones who remember that time or have that history, you know?
Right, and also springboarding off of that. I mean, just especially now during the COVID. I mean, there's a lot of. I've said this numerous times over the last couple months that so many comedians are not going to be comedians after this. I mean, if they can't
Yeah.
financially make this work, they're gonna
Yeah.
they might not come back to that craft. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tough time for that.
Yeah, because it's never been lost on me, especially as someone who started it with no money. It's never been lost on me that even the pursuit of comedy in any form has to be financed somehow. And so for people who start out really, really young, it's just obvious that their parents are their beneficiaries because you're living with your parents, so you don't need to make comedy a living right away and everything. You have time to get good and you have time to come up with a sort of business plan for yourself and stuff. But that's one of the main things that if I could impart any sort of knowledge or advice to younger comedians or just comedians that still feel like they're having a come up. I mean, I still feel like I'm on a come up. So I would just say that if you can form some sort of business plan and be better at that business and financial side, it'll take care of you so much better than just being phenomenal because there are plenty of phenomenal comedians that people don't know or people don't know where to get their product and their work, like their albums and their specials, because they didn't have the right business minded people around them, or if they didn't have any representation, they're just on their own. They didn't necessarily invest in the business side themselves. So I think that it's so important that you look at it both as a craft and a passion, but also as a business, because that's what everyone else around you sees it as, you know?
Right. And that's a huge leap from the very first time I met you. Do you remember that time? You might not
Did
remember.
I so I feel like this, I could be wrong about this,
I
so
have a good
correct me if I'm
story.
wrong.
You might remember the story, but see if you got it. Hold on. Go
I
ahead.
don't think I don't think I had figured out my tax situation the first time that you and I had met. And I was very scared. I was just like living ignorantly. I was just like, all right, so if I just save all the money that I made and just give it to the government, will they give it back? Or like I was just so scared. I was like freaking out.
Right. That's exactly the basically the gist of it. That we were out to dinner. It's me, you, and your college agent at the time, Kate Edmonds, and yeah, you were having some issues, some struggle bus issues with because I should pay my taxes, right? And I was like, and I think you said something like, I haven't done that in a couple of years, and so it's a far cry from what you just said as far as
Yeah. And then
getting
come to
your act
find out,
together. So,
looking back, I actually had been paying my taxes and didn't know it. I think because so when you met me, the years that I was talking about, I was still just making like Trader Joe's and Aldi and like odd jobs money, right?
right.
And so because that was still the type of money that I was making, not just in amount, but like, you have your W-2 and everything. I didn't realize that what I was doing once a year was paying taxes. That's how ignorant I was of the entire situation. So I actually had paid like my 2011 taxes and all this stuff
Okay.
like that. But to me, it just felt like, oh, but one time I got paid $300 to do this other thing, and I don't know if I filed for that or whatever. Not knowing that for odd jobs, it's like you don't even file. You don't even like claim half of that stuff because it's not enough money for the government to care. It's like
Right.
someone paid you $50 to mow a lawn, nobody cares. But I was like such a 22-year-old idiot that I was like, I don't know, man. I think I did some of it, but I don't think I did all of it.
I wanted to put you under my wing and just like take care of you. I felt so bad. I was like, oh boy, we got to get this guy some help.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad that more people felt that way than the way I feel looking back, which was like, why did anyone even listen to me?
Well, I think everybody goes through that at some point in time. I know
Yeah.
we're mutual friends with Roy Wood Jr. He'll tell you a horror story once that early on in his career he did a college for me, and it was I think it was Morton College.
Hmm.
This is not a good plug for them, by the way. The check was supposed to be for like $950, which he did get, but they sent a W-2 for $95,000, and
Jeez.
therefore that threw a wrench in the IRS system when he didn't claim that 95,000, but it wasn't correct, and yeah, so sometimes the taxes backfire on you. So, and he had a
Oh,
hell of a time trying to. I had him on last week, and I should have brought up that story, but yeah, I didn't want to bring up that to him directly. He might have an aneurysm. So,
how do you even explain without
well,
just sounding like you're lying? Like,
yeah,
no, no, I never made any of that money.
right, yeah. Well, I'm sure he figured it out. So eventually.
Gosh.
So yeah, it always backfires sometimes, right? All right, so moving from Louisiana to Chicago, so the Louisiana comedy scene had to have been very sparse. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm trying to think of the just. There's no. I guess there was a comedy club in Shreveport at one time. I'm not. New Orleans isn't a really
Yeah.
big comedy town. There's no
I
full time
mean,
clubs. How did you? Where'd you perform? How'd you get started there?
like when I say a couple of open mics, I truly made a handful of open mics over the course of years. Like
Okay.
it's why I don't even feel like I started until I moved to Chicago because our school, our high school had a talent show once a year, and then our my college that I went to had an open mic night every 6 months, and then there actually was a comedy club in Shreveport for a little while, but it closed down. And then outside of that, it was just thinking. I didn't know at the time that I was thinking of jokes and thinking of a set and stuff like that. It just felt like being funny, you know? And so, unless you live in New Orleans, maybe even now, I mean, I'm not fully versed in how the comedy community works all through Louisiana, but even now, it seems like the only real stand ups to come out of Louisiana are coming from New Orleans because there may not be consistent stand up comedy clubs that are like branded like an improv or a Zanies or something, but there are lots of places to get up and lots of places to get better and everything. And there is a comedy community there. So I think where I'm coming from, which was Alexandria, Louisiana, there was truly nothing. It wasn't even sparse. It was like there were maybe two guys that sort of thought of themselves as stand-ups, but without any proof that they actually went up anywhere, you know?
Literally the big fish in a small pond scenario, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so when I moved to Shreveport for college, you know, I was around, I guess you could say, a handful more stand-ups, but there still weren't that many places to do it. I mean, I guess if you were feeling particularly brave, you could try to do stand up for 5 minutes in between a karaoke night, which I'm sure would be horribly received. And then when I moved to Chicago, it was like almost an overload. It was like there's 8 mics a night, and then there's shows on top of those mics, and then the train system is smooth enough that I can get to 3 spots in one night. And so that was almost like a culture shock for me, comedy wise. Like I was so excited to do it, and I enjoyed obviously not every minute of it, but even looking back, it's like you don't even remember some of those bad times as much. And so I'm so grateful and happy that that's where I really started and got to learn the hustle and learn how to craft a joke within a night. Because if you have 3, 4 spots, you show up to that first spot with like the remnants of a joke, just like a joke in pieces, and then a little bit of it comes out when you say it for the first time, and then you go up again with a little bit more of those pieces put together, and then you go up again, and you go up that last time of the night, and it feels to this new audience like a thing that you've been thinking about, that's well fashioned, that makes total sense, and they end up thinking you're just that naturally funny, or you are a great writer or something, when really it's the reps that got you there.
Right. Definitely. I mean, and that's why you make it look so seamless, and so many comics do, and people don't know that's what you do is repetition to make it work and make it look like it's off the cuff. So I have to mention this that I have two boys, and neither one of them are really big comedy fans per se, which is kind of funny that their dad books comedy for a living, and they've really never kind of. And they're younger. I mean, my oldest was almost 19, but my youngest, Alex, his favorite comedian, which he told me he had a favorite comedian, I didn't think he even liked stand-up comedians, is you. And he discovered you with your bit catfishing the KKK. Which
yeah.
I believe has gotten you many millions of hits, and I think it's kind of one of your. I don't want to say it's your signature bit, but it's definitely one that is. I think has kind of propelled you a lot.
Sure.
Comedy Central has pushed that bit quite a bit, and yeah, I think it was just interesting for him to say, "Hey, do you know this comedian?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I do." So shout out to my son. He may or may not be watching right now. So yeah. So
that means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. He's turning 16 in a couple weeks, so that's your demographic, I guess.
Yeah, right.
so I wanted to pivot a bit on. I mean, obviously you started in stand-up, and a lot of comedians kind of work their way and navigate through different areas of the entertainment business, whether they go into acting or and such. But obviously you kind of started out and went in the writing route. So was that planned for you? Because you started writing for the Tonight Show for Jimmy Fallon. Was that like right when he started, or how much?
No, I mean, I wrote there in 2016, and then I left at the end of 2016, and then went to Daily Show in 2017. And so it wasn't as if I had dead set my sights on writing specifically. It's just when I was in Chicago, and one of the things that drew me to a writing job was just working on the jokes all day. And I like that sort of thing. I like writing, and I like learning what other comedians think is funny, and what their voices are and everything. So I think that I gravitated towards it because of that. And then the rest of it was just opportunity. So, I'm not so dead set on acting that I would turn down a perfectly good and prestigious writing job for the sake of auditioning a little bit more or something. I felt like I would learn so much more about comedy and learn so much more about myself by taking these opportunities than I would fighting to be relevant in some different sort of way that was more in front of the camera.
So is it like a 50-50? You don't mind being behind the camera versus in front, or how does it?
Yeah, the breakdown, I guess I would say, is that I I can't take for granted, and I do enjoy the stability that comes with having a steady job in comedy. That's wild. So just that concept right there is crazy.
Right.
Then the fact that I've been fortunate enough to find steady jobs in comedy that were also supportive of me as a performer and a writer. And so even then it's like, wow, this is amazing. But I think that you do have to be honest with yourself at a certain point, and if you want to progress in the field of stand-up, and you want to be more known as a stand-up, you have to be out doing stand-up, and you have to be on camera doing stand-up. And so in those ways, I think that there's going to come a day where it is absolutely essential for my career to do more things in front of the camera. But I think that in order to get good and to build up a foundation personally that is, you know, that is grounded in knowing how to create jokes and how to craft scenarios, knowing how to do that was so much more important to me than just getting attention at first, you know?
Right. But as far as the writing goes, though, I mean, walk us through the process of like when you're writing and how do you know what's going to be used for, hey, this would be better for me personally doing stand up, or hey, maybe this is something we can springboard and use for the Daily Show?
I think one of the things is that I'm rarely political as a stand-up. So I talk about my life experiences, I talk about my thoughts on things, a lot of them innocuous. And so when something is about specifically a like a political issue or a political figure, that's obviously going to be more for the show than it is for my personal stand-up because it's not something that you would really see me doing otherwise, you know? And one of the things I can also say about writing jobs that make them a little bit better for me and in the development of what I'm trying to do makes them more advantageous to take on is that when you have to write every day, it doesn't matter if you feel funny or not. So there are plenty of days I don't feel funny. I'm sure there's plenty of days where I'm not funny. But the fact that I have to craft jokes and I have to think of angles on scenarios that we all saw in a way that is not the first joke. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that happens in the Twitterverse especially is that a lot of people could see a thing and immediately think of the first thought that comes to mind being the first joke. And so they tweet that out. And that's why when something is trending, there's 9,000 people who all have the same joke about the thing that just happened. So to get to the next level of joke or to get deeper into what makes the joke funny, sometimes you need either the pressure among in yourself to keep writing and keep digging or a writing job that demands that you keep writing and keep digging. And so I think that for me, I look at how strongly I also feel about something. And there are certain things that I feel so strongly about that honestly nobody cares about because they're not that big of a deal. That's going to be in my stand up,
Okay.
you know? Whereas something that I also feel very strongly about, but it's something that's in the zeitgeist of the moment and people are talking about it because it affects a lot of people. I think that's something for the show. So that's something I would pitch. That's something I would be thinking of clearly for the show.
Gotcha. Do you think the producers at Comedy Central kind of watched your set and said this would be that guy? Do they think that way? Like, hey, he's not very political, so maybe it'll be a different angle. Because I know, like, I'm trying to think of the other. I don't know, think about that first, and then also, how many other writers are on the show? I mean, I assume the cast members do some writing as well, like Dulce and Roy and some of the other people.
So all in all, I think we have 12 writers, maybe. I haven't been in the office in so long. I haven't been able to look at everybody. But
You
yeah,
don't have too
so
many team meetings.
yeah, yeah. So we have, about a dozen writers and I think that the people that make
Those are
those
all
sort of
off screen, right? Like the behind
yeah,
the
yeah,
scenes. Okay.
yeah. So I mean, I think that I can't really speak to all the decisions that get made to put people in a room. I don't know what they are and I don't know what people are thinking or anything. I just know that for me it worked out where I was at least known enough at Comedy Central at the time and was putting out enough work and was able to be fortunate enough that my work was being passed around to different people and to be able to submit a packet and get an interview, like I think that there are always people looking for fresh perspectives and like newer talent that'll mesh well with the people that you already have.
Gotcha. Now, out of all those, say, 12 writers, do you I mean? I assume obviously things are different now, but like in the past, did you sit down in a writer's room and all bounce ideas off each other, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we are all together in different aspects throughout the day before this whole thing, before the pandemic and everything. So no, there's a lot of community, and there's a lot of great people who also just love jokes and love figuring out how to make jokes better. And that's why it's been the perfect environment for me, and it's why I love being there so much, because these are just like it's so weird. It's like I can't stress this enough. It's like these are such great people that have helped me in ways I don't even think they know that they have, but just their patient approach and their level of willingness to listen is one of the things that's helped make me more patient also as a comedian, and more a little bit more patient with myself. I really want to do it all now, and I want to get everything done immediately today, and I want to write the best hour in a week and stuff, and that sort of thing isn't just unrealistic. It's not healthy to expect of yourself, and so I think that sometimes I do have to take a breather and realize that maybe even my ambition is hurting the quality of my work to a certain degree. So then I have to be thinking of that stuff. So, having great conversations about comedy with really intelligent and funny comedy writers has been maybe one of the hallmarks of me getting to where I am creatively.
okay, that's awesome. Well, so as far as those 12 people, how many of those are actually stand-ups as well?
I'd say about half.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think about half.
can you name them? I just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. I don't know
Like
who else is
Cat
on it.
Radley
Oh,
is
Cat.
is
Okay,
absolutely great.
I know Cat.
Joe Opio is very funny. David Angelo is hilarious. Devin Delaquante is actually my office mate. So is Randall Otis, and they're both very funny stand-ups on top of being great writers. And I'm sure I'm forgetting. Oh, Matt Koff is also there and is a stand-up on top of being a comedy writer. So yeah, it's like about half of us are stand-ups and writers, and then the other half are writers primarily. Um,
Nice.
and they've also created other types of work, and have other venues of like other streams of comedy that they're putting stuff through.
Got it. When you auditioned, how does that work? You mentioned a packet? I always hear that, like send in your packet and such. But being a stand up as well, is that kind of like a hey, I want to see a packet, and then I also want to see you live? And was Trevor a part of the hiring process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are easily able to access you when it comes to your stand up if it's out there. So I don't know if there's a writing job out there that wants to see like more of your stand up. I think the packet is just important to make sure that you can write the jokes on a deadline, because that's going to be what your job is no matter how funny you are. So that was the main thing that I was important to me to get down, and I remember working on that packet, and I had actually had a one man show that I was doing the same night as I was turning in the packet. And so it was that was a crazy weekend, because I had all these nerves about if anyone was going to come to my show, if they were going to laugh, if anything. And then I had so many nerves about the packet. And so I'm so relieved and grateful and everything that it all worked out. But yeah, the process is mostly, to my understanding, for most shows, is that a packet just means a collection of things that would end up on the show if you were already a staff writer there. And so you take a crack at all those things, and then I'm assuming, see both how it meshes with what they already do, and what of the perspective is fresh enough to bring someone on.
Do you remember any of the first bits or themes, or I mean, did you have a lot that you submitted, or was it just like, hey, here's 10 ideas?
I had a decent amount that I submitted, but honestly, I couldn't tell you what they were.
And did any
Like,
of them get picked up? Like, did you pitch anything from your packet once you were employed by them? out to actually get on screen?
That's a good question. I'm sure that I repitched something, but I can't actually remember what iteration it would have ended up on in the show, if that makes sense. Because the show is also tackling such big ideas every day
Which
that
changes every day, right?
and it changes. So then everyone is contributing, little jokes here and there or big ideas that get turned into jokes or it's such a great collaborative process that I'm sure I pitched things that were in my packet and then they sort of found their way through something else. So I'm sure some of it ended up in maybe a field piece for Dulce or, a chat with Roy or, like stuff like that.
Gotcha. And I don't know if I asked earlier, but do the on-screen acts contribute as well to any of the material
Yeah,
outside
Roy's a
of?
beast. Roy is like I look up to Roy so much because he's one of the best examples of what a working comedian looks like because he's never just resting on his laurels. He's always thinking about both business things and creative things, and he's paying attention to like the cultural shifts, and he's paying attention to like I've rarely seen him call a shot and it be wrong.
Right.
Like he's very
Everything from chicken
wise.
sandwiches to the president. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
his coalition videos he had. So
yeah.
yeah, so that's awesome. So now being obviously a writer, and you being forced to, I guess, churn out ideas. I assume that. I mean, you can't just sit on your ass and not produce topics or some kind of comedy content. Do you run into writer's block?
You definitely can, and you also run into like as corny as it may sound, you also run into just writers' feelings. It's like if you don't feel funny, it doesn't even matter if you're putting out stuff that people are laughing at. And that's in stand up, that's with staff writing or sitcom writing, that's with anything. It's like you need to have your confidence together and you need to have your state of mind strong to even be putting out work that you can believe in as funny, even though people are giving you positive feedback and positive reinforcement. It's like you have to know it. And so I think my versions of writer's block have more been blocks in confidence or blocks in competence. So I think that when I first started the show, I had no idea how to do that show. So I'm coming from Fallon, but I'm also not used to writing out a whole chat. And so as I learned to do that, it helps build that competence and the confidence, but it takes a while to get there. And so just like with stand up, where the first time you do a 45-minute set, you're probably throwing every joke you've ever told in there, not even realizing that there's no cohesion in everything that you're talking about. So now you just look like a maniac just
Right.
talking
No
for
segues.
nearly
Just
an hour. No segues, no flow, no
yeah.
general vibe you're creating anything. You're just talking for 45 minutes and then you're almost jumping back between topics. You're like, another thing about my dog right after you talked about 9/11, like all of that stuff, right?
Right.
And so I more have had deep blocks in my mental state overall as I approach comedy than I have actual writer's block. Because if you wanted to really take all the fun and joy out of comedy, a lot of it is formulaic. So if you are a stand up and you want to do a joke about the Pope, all you got to do is write down all the angles, all the things that people already think about the Pope and maybe some things that people don't. Then you add some extra, rising action to it. Maybe like the Pope went and did this thing. And so then you can arrive at a joke that way. And it's much less fun, but it still works, especially if the delivery is right. And so it's not necessarily always about having the right joke. Sometimes it's just having the right feeling behind the joke.
Is there any checks and balances to when you or any other writers write something and bring it to the table to where that it hasn't been done before, that they have to kind of archive? Do they have to go over with every single bit like a fine tooth comb? Like, for example, something just came to mind about Amy Schumer's show, that there was a little backlash because some of the writers had written some things that were other comedians' bits, or whatever, and maybe they had heard them before. I don't know if it was on purpose, but is there checks and balances to that to make sure the content that you guys are putting out is 100% original and not been done before?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone also works as their own checks and balance system. It's like the scenario that you're describing was potentially not a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not just about having the right hierarchy in place. It's like when you have lots of people around that have a deep integrity and like strength of character enough to be like, hey, even if I did come up with this thing all by myself, but it's too close to this thing, maybe we don't do it. So I'm not always in every room and every conversation, but I think that it speaks for itself that we're not having those problems, I guess. Like I
Keep
think
it
that
the checks and balances between yourself and say, hey, that sounds like XYZ or whatever.
yeah, and like I said before, there's levels to the joke. So I think some of what happened in some of those other situations that you're talking about was that a very first level joke was being told. And so it's
Right.
very easy for a very first level joke to be repeated and said at the same time or said 2 years before, or you know what I mean? And so I think that sometimes those first level jokes can lead to people feeling like, hey, that's my thing. And it's like, really is going to the ice cream shop with diarrhea your thing? That's your thing.
Yeah.
That's
The
you're the only
lactose
person
intolerant. Right. Yeah.
you're the only person that's ever happened to, is that you didn't care that you were lactose intolerant and then you went to the ice cream shop and then you pooped your pants. That's your thing.
Right.
Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's 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 much more about trying your damnedest to come up with original things and then admitting when they're not. Like I feel like even as a stand up, I've had to throw jokes away because I've been like, yeah, I know that I came up with that joke and I did it completely of my own, you know, willpower is not the right word, but like out of my own creativity, I wrote a joke. And now that I'm on Twitter, I see that like this joke already exists in different iterations through different people. Half of them aren't even comedians. So you know what? I have to let it go. It's not worth it. It's not worth explaining to people every time
Right. Is that
that
tough?
this is
Is
mine.
it tough to let one of your babies go? Like if you know it's what, hey man, that kills in the club, it's a slam dunk, and then
Yeah.
yeah, is it
It
difficult?
used to be, but I think once I started writing at Tonight Show, that was when I was like, "Oh, this is if you really do write every day, nothing means the same amount to you as if you're writing once in a while or only when you feel funny or only when you feel inspired. And then it does take you 2 years to come up with 30 minutes. I'm sure that for those people, that time is very precious, and I can understand it because we're also doing other things. It's like life isn't just about getting up on stage and telling your jokes even as a comedian. Like you have to have other important things in your life. So I can see if someone isn't writing consistently, that the time that they create is very precious to them. They're very protective of it, as you should be. But I think that when it's your job to write every day, and when you start looking at writing as something you could do every day, then when you have these babies that look like somebody else's twin, it's like, yeah, I got to let this go. This is not worth it, because we're in an information age where so many people are saying the same thing at the same time in different languages too. But we still have this weird feeling towards, obviously I'm the only person that could have this thought and think of this thing out of all the billions of people on the planet. And I think that that idea is a little diluted and it's a little delusional. I've had jokes that I ended up seeing someone I admired live, and then they had that same joke, and I'm like, well, I guess that's dead because they're more famous, so they get it.
Hmm.
That's just sort of the way it is. It's happened to me maybe 3 times where I seen someone go up and they were much more actually famous. And I was like, oof, that's too close.
Too
So I guess I
close.
got to kill my bit.
Did you tell the comedian and say, "Hey, I got a bit"?
No,
I
not at
used
all.
I used to have a bit similar to that.
Not
no,
at
no
all.
longer.
It was not worth bothering them with it. It was like, yeah, we both had the same thing happen and we took away the same observation from it. And maybe that was also an instance of me not being original enough with the stimulus, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, you mentioned activities outside of stand up, as you know, everybody does have that. What is your happy place outside of stand up?
Um, wow, that's a good question. I used to like to go to the gym when that was a thing, and I really enjoy MMA. I think that MMA is an incredible sport, and I really respect the people that do it. And so I got into jujitsu in the last, I guess, year and a half, actually trying to do it, and I'm terrible. Oh, I'm so bad. But I also, it has only built up that appreciation and that respect even more because now I look at the people who are good at the one thing that I'm bad at and then all the other things that they do and it's just it's mind blowing. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy analysis of it. That's a big thing for me that has sort of brought me back into the sports world, I guess you could say, because there were several years where there wasn't a single sport that I cared about and I didn't watch and I didn't, it was all whatever to me. But then my love and respect of MMA has then built an appreciation of just grappling in general and watching that and following some people. And, one of the big benefits of being in New York is that everyone here is doing a little bit of everything. So now I'm not that far from, Gracie Jiu Jitsu. Like some of the best jujitsu practitioners in the world are in New Jersey and New York. So now, just by proximity, I have the ability to learn from or meet or have a conversation with some of them, and that's incredible.
Well, maybe we'll see you on the MMA circuit here soon.
No, not at all. I'm not only weak, I don't have the best spatial awareness and the worst hand-eye coordination. So it would be unfair for anyone to hit me.
Noted. Well, don't they have like a featherweight division?
Look, those people, I'm actually more scared of the little ones sometimes because the little ones just they don't care. They just come at you. The big guys are more calculated because they know like most heavyweight fights aren't long. Like both those guys are like this guy could knock me out in one punch. So I'm
Right.
going to be very careful. I'm going to pick. But when a little guy can just pepper you with shots, you're gonna be busted up. That's gonna change all your plans for the next few months.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to do stand up if you can't talk out of your mouth.
Yeah, yeah. If your mouth is wired shut and both your eyes are half closed.
Oh man. Hey, going back to the Tonight Show. So, was there a long gap between your writing gig for the Tonight Show, as opposed to the Daily Show on Comedy Central?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
did you? And did you? All right. Oh, sorry to interrupt.
no, you're
Answer
okay.
that one first. Answer
It
that one
was it
first.
was most of the year. So I
Okay.
left the Tonight Show at the end of 2016, and then I started at the Daily Show October of 2017.
Okay.
So it was a good amount of time. It was most of the year.
All right. And not to get it all up in your business, did they let you go,
Mhm.
or did you just leave on your own? Like, were you tired of writing for them?
I mean, I wasn't tired of writing for them, but I definitely wanted to do other things, and I had a pilot in the works that
Okay.
has obviously since not been made. But sometimes you take a leap and it doesn't pay off.
So, is that why you left to could go pursue the pilot?
Yeah, that was the main reason. So I really felt like it was going to happen too because it was like just heavy hitters in it. It was
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is definitely going to happen
Who
because
else
it was
was in it?
also like Chris Red was in it
Okay.
and like Jack Knight was in it and we were and the show seemed pretty cheap to make. So I was like, guys, we're in it. We're winning. This is definitely going to happen. And then like 4 months later, I'm still waiting by the phone. I'm like, what did I do to my life?
Well, this is obviously before Chris Red got SNL. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
was.
I think it all works out in the end, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was that for NBC?
No, no, that was for Comedy Central.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know how that worked as far as like could you even take a pilot deal if you were with like say with Comedy Central if you're already working for NBC? Does that work that way, or is it kind of like
It,
they don't
to
want?
my understanding, everybody's deal can be different. So if you have the right people in place, they can hopefully finesse
Negotiate.
something for you. I have no idea. I don't
Negotiate.
like since I'm not on that side, I don't really know, but I know of people who have been doing several things at one time where you're like, wow, they must have either everybody believes in them and is just cool with them doing whatever, or they must have an amazing lawyer and agent that get them the best sweetheart deal every time they walk into a room. And I'm all for both of those things. Like more power to anybody who, especially the time that we're living in, it's like get your money, get your dreams made, whatever you can do, you know.
Would you ever write for a sitcom?
I would, yeah. Yeah, I think I would, but I almost wonder if it by that point if I shouldn't just be try to be in the sitcom, you know? Like I said, I love writing and I love working on jokes, working on certain scenarios and stuff, but at a certain point you do have to jump in front of the camera and a sitcom might be the right place for me, I think. I think I already come off to people like a bit of a cartoon character.
Well, you got the hair going. That's part of it, I guess. Maybe so.
I think it makes me definitely makes me more animatable. Like
Yeah.
the poster that um, was made for my podcast looks enough like me that I'm like maybe I am kind of a cartoon. I don't know.
Well, so I mean, you've done so much already, and I know your star is continuing to rise. What's the next thing? What do you want to do? What's the next thing like down the road?
Yeah.
If you could map out your comedy future right now, over say the next 5 to 10 years, what would you? How would you see this being written out?
I mean, I think that the touring will definitely come up a notch whenever that's a possibility, and I want to go international with it as much as possible. I want to tour in other countries and everything, and then just having lots of my work come out is really important to me. So it's why I started a podcast. It's why I've been working and writing nonstop, even though we've been in this global pandemic where people can't tour, because I'm just planning for when things can line up. I think you have to be ready for those opportunities and you have to create them sometimes. And so that's what I'm planning to do and trying to do. So I want to have my work come out and be not just really, really funny, but like really high concept art. I want to build up those two things together at the same time to make something that's both visually stimulating and something that is really funny and maybe makes you think a little bit, but is overall a good time. And and then past that, I think that there are a lot of people that I want to see succeed and want to see do really well. And so building up my brand and I don't know, I don't even know what you would call it, but just building up my own brand enough so that people can trust me when I say that other people are funny and bring people along with me. Because right now it's like, you know, you do your best to take care of yourself and everything and build yourself up and stuff. But there's lots of people out of Chicago, lots of people in New York right now currently that I think are incredibly funny people that need a little bit more shine. And I want to be able to do that for them. And so I think about them sometimes when I'm also thinking about next steps for myself is like, is this something that's going to show people that I have taste and that I am creating comedy and art, and then is this next endeavor, whatever it is I do, going to build up the trust so that way when I try to put someone else on the way that Trevor has put me on, that people will believe it, and that they'll see like, oh, Josh likes this person, they're the real deal. I want to be able to do that for people the way that people have done it for me.
That's awesome, man. It's pretty selfless, and it's a rarity to hear in this business, and that's pretty
Yeah, I mean,
awesome.
I'm not perfect. I also want to make a lot of money, and
Well, that comes with
and
it, right? The
ideally,
rising tides raises all ships, right? So
yeah, that's the hope. That would actually be. I'm not gonna lie, that'd be a little bit of a bummer if I put like 5 people on and they just crushed me. They just
yeah.
they just left me in their dust. I'd be like, oh no.
Or their star just like shoots past yours, and you're like, oh, that's
Oh
Josh
man,
Johnson.
I
You're
need their coattails.
then you have to go call the other Josh Johnson. Well, awesome, man. This is the part of the show called the check drop, when you can plug your whatever you want to plug. I kind of let you kind of end out the show however you want to end it.
Okay. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Josh Johnson Comedy. On Twitter, I'm at Josh Johnson. Facebook, Josh J Comedy. YouTube, Josh Johnson Comedy. And then you can check out my podcast, The Josh Johnson Show. It comes out every Thursday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we're just going to be expanding and spreading more over the next few weeks. So watch out for it when it finally gets to come to Stitcher, Pandora, all that other stuff. But for right now, Spotify and Apple are the best places to go. And thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. It's great to catch
Absolutely,
up.
man. It's so good to catch up with you, man. And I know I asked a lot of questions about the writing gig, but that's just one part of the business I don't know much about. I'm more about the live stand-up aspect of it. So
Oh, sure.
thanks for letting all the listeners know all the details of behind the scenes of you as a writer over at the Comedy Central's Daily Show. So thanks for coming out, and everybody listening. If you need a comedian, go to summitcomedy.com. And thanks again, Josh. We'll see you on the flip side.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.